Now to Ukraine, and you've just been there in an active war zone, and you've come back with the opinion that Russia will lose this war. Tell my audience why you've reached that conclusion. I mean, we're talking about a nuclear power here.
Yeah, I just got back last night. I was in the south. I was all across the country, but primarily in the south, which is we've seen most of the fighting, or a lot of the fighting recently. And in one of the four regions that Vladimir Putin last month had this sort of crock referendum on. You'll remember that. He announced that the people would have a vote as to whether or not they wanted to be annexed by Russia. And amazingly enough, his poll came back with a sort of 102% approval ratings of the public to be annexed by the Russians. In fact, these areas, and I think you're showing pictures from Kherson, which is one of the cities in the south that's just been liberated by the Ukrainians, was in one of those four regions that Vladimir Putin tried to claim ownership of. The Russians have retreated from there. They've been beaten back. Now, this is right by the bridge that was blown up more than a month ago that stopped Russian supplies being able to be continually brought in. The Russian army is badly equipped. I've seen that for myself now. They are very badly equipped. They have no justification for being in Ukraine. They have very low morale on their own side, clearly, and appalling leadership, including appalling generalship. On the other side, the Ukrainians are fighting for their lives. They're fighting for their countries and their families. I met men and women on the front line who haven't been able to be rotated out, haven't seen their own families since Russia invaded earlier this year, but they know that they are fighting for their families, for their loved ones, for their country, for their independence, and not to be gobbled up by the Kremlin. And what I saw on the ground in terms of the fight and the success of the Ukrainian counteroffensive against the Russians persuades me, at any rate, that certainly Russia can't win this war. It just can't. It already hasn't won this war. It has already failed in the attempts that it tried to make earlier this year. And all the claims of Vladimir Putin have been shown to be ridiculous. And I'm sorry that so many people parrot them in the West. But it's perfectly clear to me that the Ukrainians are winning the conflict, the Russians are losing, they are being beaten back, and the question now is not whether Vladimir Putin can hold on to the four regions he tried to annex this year, but whether or not he can even go back to the status quo ante of pre-2014 and hold on to the Crimea. I mean, I was down by the Crimea there, and it's going to be very interesting to see because the Russian forces are depleted, are demoralized. They're throwing prisoners at the front line, and then when prisoners try to escape, they get shot by Russian snipers from their own side for desertion. The Russians are sending ill-equipped, badly demoralized troops at the front, and the Ukrainians are filled with morale and desire to win. And why wouldn't they be? Because they're fighting for their country.
I'd encourage everybody to read Douglas's piece in the New York Post about his trip to Ukraine. I think it'd be very illuminating indeed.